In the heart of Ogobiri Kingdom, where the lush mangroves meet the winding whispering river, Queen Adanna knelt by the water's edge before dawn. The river was calm, its surface shimmering with the pale light of the rising sun. The air was heavy with mist and the scent of wet earth. All around her the ancient trees whispered secrets on the morning breeze. Adanna's heart was heavy. For years she had borne 3 daughters, Adize, Ngozi, and Miriam, all precious, but none the son King Emeka demanded to secure his throne and the future of their people. The king's patience had thinned, his words sharp and cold. "You have 1 month," he had warned, "to bring me an heir, or I will take another wife who will." Fear gripped Adanna's soul. To lose her place as queen and risk tearing her family apart was unthinkable. Yet the pressure of tradition, the weight of expectation, and the whispers of the court left her no choice. The villagers already murmured that without a male heir, the kingdom's blessings would falter. The crops would fail, the river would dry, and the ancestors would turn their backs. In her desperation, Adanna turned to the sacred waters of the Whispering River, home of Mami Wata. The powerful river goddess said to grant favors but demand terrible prices. As she dipped her fingers into the cool river, a soft glow shimmered in the mist. Slowly from the center of the river, a radiant figure emerged. Her body seemed made of liquid light and water, her eyes glowing with ancient wisdom. "Mami Wata," Adanna whispered, bowing her head. "I beg you, grant me a son to save my kingdom, my family, my honor." The goddess's voice was both calm and commanding. "A son you shall have, but every gift demands a price. You must promise that one of your daughters will marry my son, cursed and alone, when the time comes. Fail this, and the river's wrath will fall upon you." Adanna's heart pounded. She thought of her daughter's laughter at the palace, the king's cold eyes, and the future of Ogobiri. With a trembling voice, she vowed, "I accept your terms. I will keep this promise." The river goddess smiled, a smile full of mystery and power, and vanished beneath the shimmering waters. Adanna rose, soaked in hope and dread. She knew this was only the beginning of a path that would test her family's love, courage, and honor. Back at the grand palace of Ogobiri, tension hung heavy like the humid air before a storm. King Emeka stood tall and rigid in the throne room, his golden robes shimmering under the flickering torchlight. His dark eyes burned with frustration as he faced Queen Adanna. "You have made a promise behind my back," he demanded, voice sharp as the edge of his ceremonial sword. "To a river goddess, no less. Do you realize the shame this brings upon our house?" Adanna's hands trembled, but she met his gaze with unwavering resolve. "I did what I had to, Emeka. The kingdom needed an heir. The kingdom needs a son born of flesh and blood, not a bargain struck with spirits," he interrupted harshly. "You know what the people say. They whisper of curses and monsters. They mock our lineage." Their daughters, Adize and Ngozi, watched from the shadowed gallery, their faces twisted with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Adize, proud and sharp-tongued, sneered, "Mother, you've doomed us all. How could you promise us to a monster?" Ngozi's voice dripped with contempt. "We are princesses of Ogobiri, not pawns to some river beast. Miriam is foolish to even consider this." The youngest princess, Miriam, remained silent, but her eyes reflected a quiet strength. She knew her mother's choice was born of love and desperation, yet the fear of the unknown gnawed at her heart. Days passed with the kingdom sinking into unrest. The river, once a lifeline, began to wane. The fishermen's nets came up empty. Farmers wept over withered crops. The villagers murmured prayers, fearful the gods had turned away. Chief priest Obinna entered the palace, his face grave. "My king, the land suffers because the promise made to Mami Wata has not been honored. The river's spirit demands its due." King Emeka clenched his fists. "Then let the one who made this promise fulfill it. Which daughter will marry this river prince?" Silence filled the hall. Miriam stepped forward, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. "Father, I will go. I will marry the river's son and bring peace back to Ogobiri." The king's face paled, torn between disbelief and admiration. "You are still but a child." "I understand," Miriam said softly, "but if not me, then who?" Adiza and Ngozi turned away in scorn, but the king's gaze lingered on Miriam, his youngest, the hope of their future. Outside the palace, the wind carried whispers of change. The river's promise was about to unfold, and with it, the fate of the kingdom would be decided. 3 days later, the sun rose over Ogobiri with a soft golden glow, casting long shadows across the palace courtyard. The air was thick with anticipation, whispers flowing through the halls like a restless tide. King Emeka stood by the palace gates, his heart a storm of pride and fear. Beside him, Chief Priest Obinna clutched his carved staff, murmuring prayers to appease the river spirits. The villagers gathered in the square, their faces a mix of hope, dread, and curiosity. Then, without fanfare, the ground at the far end of the courtyard shifted. A soft mist curled upward, swirling like smoke on the morning breeze. From the haze emerged a tall figure, his presence both majestic and unsettling. Prince Obasi, the River Prince, stood before them. His body moved with the fluid grace of the river itself. Broad shoulders and long arms told of strength and endurance. Yet it was his face that captured all eyes, the left side noble and proud, the right side marred by twisted scars and dark, magical markings. His eyes, deep and glowing faintly, held wisdom and sadness. King Emeka's jaw clenched as he took a step forward, sword hand twitching at his side. "You were not invited," the king growled. Prince Obasi's voice was calm, steady like flowing water. "I was promised. I have come for the daughter pledged to me." Emeka's gaze hardened. "No daughter of Ogobiri will marry a cursed son of the river. This kingdom will never accept you." The prince's eyes softened, yet there was steel beneath the kindness. "I am what your wife begged for when she feared losing her place. The promise was made, and I am here to collect." A tense silence stretched as the king raised his sword, the metal gleaming ominously. "Strike me, and the river will rise. Break the promise, and the goddess will not forgive. Refuse me, and the land will wither." King Emeka's breath caught. The weight of ancient magic pressed down on him, heavier than any blade. Slowly, reluctantly, he lowered his sword. Miriam stepped forward, her heart pounding, her eyes fixed on the prince. "I am ready," she whispered. The River Prince extended his hand, and as their fingers met, a surge of warmth and power flowed between them. The river's mist thickened, swirling with promise and fate. Outside, the whispering river began to swell, its waters returning to life, carrying with it hope for Ogobiri once more. In the days following the River Prince's arrival, the kingdom of Ogobiri breathed a fragile hope. The whispering river flowed strong again, nourishing the fields and filling the fishermen's nets. The villagers whispered prayers of gratitude, yet not all were at peace. Inside the palace, Queen Adanna watched her youngest daughter Miriam with a mixture of pride and sorrow. Miriam had embraced her fate with quiet courage, but the weight of the promise pressed heavily upon her shoulders. She was no longer just a princess, she was the river's bride. Adiza and Ngozi's bitterness deepened. They wore smiles at court, but behind closed doors their envy festered. "She has doomed us all," Adiza hissed, "marrying a beast cursed by Mamiwata." Ngozi nodded sharply. "No one in Ogobiri will accept that monster as our brother-in-law. Miriam will be cast out, forgotten." Miriam heard their whispers, but did not falter. Each day she spent time learning the ways of the river and the magic that clung to Obasi's spirit. Slowly she saw beyond his scarred face into the kindness and wisdom that made him more than legend. One evening as the sun dipped low, Miriam and Obasi sat by the riverbank. The water shimmered with fireflies, the air cool and fragrant. "Do you regret this?" Obasi asked softly. Miriam shook her head. "No, though the path is hard, I see the strength in you. The curse is not your prison, but the mask that hides your true self." Obasi's eyes glistened with tears. "For 10 long years, I have waited for someone who would see me. Not as a monster, but as a man." Their hands found each other, bridging 2 worlds, one of curse and one of hope. But beyond the palace walls, not all hearts had softened. King Emeka's counsel whispered warnings, and the villagers' murmurs grew restless. The curse's price was steep, and not everyone was willing to pay it. In the silence of her chamber, Queen Adanna prayed that her daughter's courage would be enough to save them all. The weeks passed, and Miriam's presence beside Prince Obasi became a symbol of hope and defiance. Together they walked to the riverbanks, restoring the balance between land and water, slowly healing the wounds the curse had inflicted on Ogobiri. Yet inside the palace walls a storm brewed. Adiza and Ngozi's jealousy hardened into resentment. They could not bear to see their youngest sister rise in honor while they remained in shadows of doubt and bitterness. "This river prince is a curse upon our family," Adiza whispered fiercely to Ngozi one evening. "Mother's promise shackled us all. Miriam has thrown away her future. And ours." Ngozi nodded grimly. "The villagers fear him, the council fears him. Even the king questions this alliance. It won't last." King Emeka, torn between tradition and the urgent needs of his people, wrestled with his pride. He had accepted the promise but refused to truly welcome Obasi or Miriam as part of the royal bloodline. "Your place is beside him, Miriam," the king said one night, voice heavy, "but know that the palace and the people may never fully accept this union." Miriam bowed her head, determination shining in her eyes. "Father, I do this for Ogobiri. If my heart and love can heal what curses could not, I will face whatever comes." Outside the palace, the drought lifted as the river's waters glistened under the sun. Fish returned, crops flourished, and the people's spirits lifted. But some whispered fearfully of the cost still owed. One night, a fierce storm erupted over Ogobiri. Thunder roared and lightning split the sky, as if the gods themselves quarreled. In the heart of the tempest, a vision appeared. The river goddess, shimmering in torrents of rain, reminding all that the promise was sacred and must be honored fully. Miriam stood firm amidst the storm, her hand clasped tightly in Obasi's. Together they faced the fury, ready to fulfill their destiny and prove that love and courage could overcome even the darkest curses. As days turned to weeks, Miriam and Prince Obasi grew closer, their bond deepening beyond duty into true love. The palace began to sense the change, not just in the river's healing, but in the quiet strength radiating from the River Prince. One evening, beneath a sky dusted with stars, Miriam and Obasi sat by the riverbank where their journey began. The moonlight shimmered on the water's surface, casting silver light on their faces. "Miriam," Obasi said softly, "you see beyond my scars. Your love is the first light to touch my shadowed soul." Tears filled Miriam's eyes. "You are not the monster they fear. You are the prince who has waited so long to be loved for who you truly are." In that moment, their hands met, and a warm glow enveloped them, a radiant light bursting forth like the sun's first rays after a long night. The air hummed with magic, the river sang with joy, and the curse that had bound Obasi began to fade. Slowly, the twisted marks on his face smoothed away, revealing the handsome features of a true prince. His scars vanished like mist at dawn, the heavy burden of the river's wrath lifted, replaced by a shining aura of freedom and hope. Miriam smiled through her tears, overwhelmed by the miracle. "The curse is broken." Obasi's voice was filled with wonder. "Because of you, I am free. Together we can bring peace and prosperity to Ogobiri and beyond." News of the transformation spread quickly through the kingdom. The villagers rejoiced, the drought ended, and the land blossomed. Even the king's heart softened as he witnessed the power of love and promise fulfilled. Yet not all were pleased. Adiza and Ngozi's envy burned hotter, their bitterness twisting into plans of their own. The story of love and redemption had only just begun. With the curse lifted, Prince Obasi stood tall and radiant beside Miriam as they returned to Ogobiri. The golden carriage, adorned with intricate carvings of river spirits and ancestral symbols, rolled through the village gates, pulled by white horses whose hooves seemed to dance on air. Villagers lined the streets, their faces alight with joy and wonder. They sang songs of Miriam's bravery and Obasi's redemption, songs that would echo for generations. King Emeka and Queen Adanna waited at the palace steps, hands clasped tightly, hearts pounding with a mixture of pride and awe. As Miriam stepped down, glowing with newfound strength, she knelt before her parents. "Rise, my daughter," King Emeka said, tears glistening in his eyes. "You have saved us all and restored honor to our kingdom." Obasi stepped forward, bowing respectfully. "Your Majesty, I am Prince Jackson of the Four Hills Kingdom, cursed and cast out, but redeemed by love and truth." The king nodded, acceptance shining in his gaze. "You are no longer a river prince, but our brother and son-in-law." Inside the palace, Adizi and Ngozi stood in stunned silence, their bitterness replaced by reluctant respect. The power of love and sacrifice had changed everything. Miriam ruled with wisdom and kindness, visiting Ogobiri often and healing old wounds. She forgave her sisters and embraced her people, a queen both strong and compassionate. The whispering river flowed clear and full, a symbol of promises kept, curses broken, and futures reclaimed. The kingdom flourished under the new dawn, where love and courage triumphed over fear and judgment. And so Queen Miriam and Prince Obasi lived in peace, their hearts forever bound by the river's promise.